in today's class, we're gonna go over some stuff sitting. So if you have a chair, that would be great. If not, I guess the couch would be the next. And then I do have a towel up, rolled up and just ready. So it's folded in half and then folded into thirds and then rolled up. So the same that I had in my last video. So into thirds, and then I lay it down and then roll it up. So if you don't have a chair, you also could just come and sit on it. It's said a lot that the things furthest from our heart is going to be the most important, and the things that first start dying, they might not actually shrivel down and die, but when they don't have circulation, when they don't start to move that well, when they don't have good communication to the brain, that can then start to happen very slowly, and you start to get used to it, and then by the time you get diagnosed with something, or you're just so deconditioned you can't really reverse a lot of these things, that these are things I'm hoping that you can do to move before a workout, after a workout, as part of your workout. It can be called like a pre-workout sort of thing because they're very gentle but very important. So we'll start with your hands. So you're gonna take the pointer and the thumb, and then what you're gonna do is come put the crease, what's in the middle, together. So my shoulders are down, I'm working my armpits to come and push in, and what I'm doing is putting pressure around and down and moving it. So what I also could do is use one finger and then just put it here. And then I'm just sinking into that space, and then I'm kind of moving a little towards the outside, putting that same pressure, and then going to the inside. So I'm kind of going back and forth with my finger. This is going to help lymphatic drainage, circulation, communication, and it has to go through all of this area. So if we're going to do the further extremities, everything in between should be addressed. So whether you do one finger or both, the next two spaces, the two fingers, is going to be your pointer and your middle, and then you're going to come and put them into the webbing of the hand. And then I'm going towards one direction and the other direction. So I'm just going across that webbing. You don't need to do a ton of pressure. If it's tender, back off, because what I don't want is tension. So you're going into as much as you can tolerate without creating more tension. If you have some condition already in this area and it doesn't feel good and your gut's telling you not to do it, you listen to that. Or do it a very tiny bit, and then hopefully a tiny bit will let you do more later. Now we'll go in between the middle finger and the ring finger and then put pressure in here. So we're just going space by space, wiggling a little forward, a little back. I'm trying to hold it about 30 seconds. Longer is even better. I feel like we could sometimes just spend days doing these, and there might be a time and a place to do that, but this is just part of the time you're dedicating towards yourself. And now to the pinky and the ring finger, and so I'm coming in. So let's get you closer in case you're seeing. So I'm just here and then kind of just, twisting my hand a little bit, or trying to roll towards the back of one hand and then towards the palm of one hand, and then doing that on the other side. And then what did you notice? So did you notice there was one space that was much tighter than the other? Like this, I didn't really feel tension. I think it was the two here, for me, that were really tender. We're trying to create space through these joints, and when you don't have that space, arthritis could be happening, a lot of things could be happening. So all we're doing is just trying to give space. So then how your hand should open and close is with all of your fingers in a straight line. If you start to get arthritis, there can be a twist, or they don't track the right way. A lot of people with this thumb issue sometimes don't bend this joint right by the thumb. They have this straight, and then they move this joint a lot, and that thumb kind of like extends here. So you do want all articulation of all of this stuff to work. And just, noticing your hands, you might need to teach alignment to them. I've worked with people with strokes who the fingers as is don't work very well, but when you kind of guide them into that straight alignment and figure out where that turn is from, usually the extensors and the flexors of the fingers work, but when they're twisted and torqued through fascia restriction, they're not really flexing and extending straight. They have other things going on. That's a stroke. But that also could happen with someone with arthritis, with someone who maybe grips a lot or types a lot and has imbalance, starting to get more bone deformations. Sometimes the body, can be guided back into working, and you just need to keep breaking it down. So we're gonna do your feet. If you can't reach your feet, then what you can do is your hands again. Or you can buy a dowel at Home Depot, at Lowe's. Something like 1/2 inch to 1 inch. You can have it long enough, put your feet up, put it in between your toes, put your other foot on top of the dowel to put pressure down if you want. You can keep your socks on. I have my feet, bare feet for now, so I'm gonna put my finger in between the first 2 toes, having my foot be neutral. So my toes are hanging off here, and then I'm putting pressure in the webbing, and then I'm starting at the lower part of my foot and putting sustained pressure on as I then add the pressure towards the top of my foot, which I feel a lot more. So if you were to wear a thonged shoe, this is where this space would be. And then I'm going back down. So I'm just kind of coming up and down with that pressure of my finger. Especially if you have a bunion or hammer toes, usually I have seen foot function starts to go, so you can't use your feet as well. And then what comes first, the foot function getting lost or the bunion and the hammer toes? I'm going to the next 2, and I'm putting pressure down. And I might need to hold my foot different to have my hand have a good leverage. I might need to use one finger stacked on top of the other if I don't have good strength. So we're just creating space between the toes, between the joints, and then we're releasing the adhesion that's between. And this could be said from anywhere between your feet to your head, really, that you can have circulation problems coming from fascia restricting your calf or your hamstring or your hip. And where do you feel it? I don't know. If you could feel it where the restriction is, you could feel it at a completely different place. It's not always where the pain is where the problem is. It sometimes is, yes, you're feeling the nerve where the pain is, but that's not necessarily where it's coming from. Go to between the next 2. So now I'm between the 3rd and the 4th, working my way down to the smaller toe. I'm going down to up to down, but you can go up to down to up. Whatever kind of makes sense for you. Again, you might be feeling some spots have more tension than others. And then we're going in between the last 2, so the pinky and the 4th toe. I guess it's called the ring toe. So the same thing as the hands bending down, the toes should also have that articulation down and be able to lift. The second toe should not fold over the big toe, but because our feet can tend to get pushed in shoes and they tend to be too narrow for us, sometimes the toes stack on top of each other. So you can keep your finger between and guide which toe needs to be. So my big toe comes in a little too much, and that second toe starts to overlap it. And so I might need to use this hand to kind of teach that toe to lift and lower to create the space. You could also try to put each finger through the toes, but it's a little different because it doesn't put pressure on one. So having all of them is not going to be the same. Sometimes the ball of my foot hurts, and what helps me is I get those toe spacers that goes on each toe. I have had people say that they have the ones that go around the 3 middle toes and they have a bump underneath, but that's because their toes collapse that way in their hammer toe. So there is a lot of things out there to support you. in these things, something like a cheap pedicure spacer I've used a while, because it just feels so good to have the circulation better. And I'm lifting the toes up and I'm curling them down, making sure each of that knuckle is doing what it should. So then with this same foot, be gentle with this, but you're gonna do what's called scissor. You're gonna lift the second toe and drop the big toe, and then do the opposite of that. So I'm just gently, full range of motion, pulling them away from each other. So it's called a scissor and a scissor. Now I'm gonna do a circle out away from each other, and then a circle out away from each other. Just going slow, especially if you have tight, bad feet, you wanna go slow. I'm going to the next two toes, so the second and third toe. One's coming up, one's coming down. One's coming up, one's coming down. Do that again for 3, and then do that again for 4. Now you're gonna do circle out away from each other, and then a circle out away from each other. And now you're going to the next toes, the third and the fourth. So I'm doing scissor, scissor, and then a circle around, and a circle around. So I'm doing that with my feet and with my hands, but that's what's happening. I don't know the timing of it, so we'll just do a circle away from each other and a circle away from each other. And then I'm gonna go to the next two toes. So the small toe and the second smallest toe. Scissor, scissor, and circle, and circle. So you might have noticed where it seems to be tight. A lot of things is the first 3 toes. So those tend to need a little bit more. Now, how does your foot feel? Can you feel more blood flow? Does it feel warm? Does it feel cold? Do you feel circulation? Does it feel tingly? Do you feel no difference? There's still benefit to it if you aren't feeling a huge difference. So we're gonna start with the spacing. So I'm putting my finger between the toe. I'm gonna stack both on top of each other. And I'm putting pressure starting at the lower part, putting pressure in the webbing, as I slowly come and put pressure towards the top of the foot, and then slowly work the way down. And then doing that again up and down. Especially if you have a bunion, this space is increased, and so you might have a lot of adhesions in here, just in your fascia, because of the space. We're gonna move to the next two toes if you're ready. So I'm gonna go to my second and third toe, in between them, putting the pressure down and in, and then working the way towards the lower part, and then back up. Some people have more webbing here. They have a little bit more of these two toes webbed. So you might have to consider just backing off a little bit, but again, work on less tension. So if it's too much tension, you're not necessarily gonna get more benefit, unless you're someone who likes it. I have a couple people who like harder is more and is better, but as long as the whole nervous system responds to less tension, that they're not like clenching their jaw because they think that it's gonna break down more, that's probably the earlier days of fascia releasing, but now you can actually have much gentler touches and you can unwind many layers. The myofascial is more superficial, and the muscular fascia, we're working all the way down to the bone. And so it can be very deep adhesions from a long time ago. Go to the next two toes, coming forward and back. Something is, long ago that you've long forgotten about, that soft tissue, I just feel like never really heals 100%, that sometimes a broken bone is a better injury. Then you develop more calcium and scar on the bone, but it doesn't always restrict the muscles, which when it becomes muscular, we tend to feel it a lot. But this kind of stuff, releasing the adhesions, could help it. And then we're gonna go the last two toes, so between the small two's toes, and working forward and back. And as I got to the outer edge of my foot, I don't need as much pressure. It's a little bit more sensitive, so I'm okay with just one hand and one finger. But I am holding my other wrist in with this, so I'm trying to not have it be all muscular getting me in this. Scissor, 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 circle, circle. So we'll do scissor one comes up, one comes down, switch, 3, and then 4, and then 2 circles out away, 2, that's the second one. Go to the next 2, 1 up, 1 down, 1 up, 1 down, 2, and then circling around and circling around to the next 2 toe, 1 up, 1 up, that's 3. Going slow with that intentional range. So if you're kind of stiff, dehydrated, older, really deconditioned, you might need to go even slower. And then switching to the 2 final toes, 1 up, 1 down. And then circling around, and then circling around. Good. Let's put your fingers all between each of the toes. It might be the fingertips, which are smaller. If you have, you might be able to put them up more, and then you're gonna lift the toes up and then come and drop them down. And you're trying to check alignment to see if they're tracking up and down as you come and bend them down. And you might need to guide and let them release. I've had someone in their 70s come to me with very tight feet, but very responsive fascia response. And so it was amazing how curled up their toes were and hammer toes. And then the more we released the feet, they actually released them in a session, you know, and then as long as we stayed with it, it would keep releasing. They stopped coming, and I don't know if they stuck with it, but it's these things that really are the smaller gauges of what health is. All right, so let's just do some gentle shoulder lifts, inhale, and then drop the shoulder blades down and back. And I'm trying to think of the muscles down between my shoulder blades helping me. Bringing it up, inhale, and then dropping the shoulder blades down. This is just, you know, a lot of circulation, a lot of lymphatic stuff is here. And so by moving without tensing, we're so tense here, we don't need to lift up too well. It's more about this down and back, up and down and back. That we're just trying to somewhat be playful. You know, animals don't, you know, stretch and tense. They're really fluid with that stretching. And I don't know, my dog, no matter how much I'm like, come on, let's go outside, he always takes his time to do the nice yawning stretch and upward dog and down dog. And last time here, just dropping those shoulders down. All right, so this is optional to sit on this towel while we do the next exercises. If you don't have the towel around or you just didn't like it, then don't do it if it doesn't feel good. But it's gonna help to release some of the pelvic floor. So I'm sitting on the towel, it's between my 2 sit bones, and I can lean forward a little bit and put it towards my pubic bone. So I'm on inside of 2 sit bones and pubic bone. And I can just gently shift a little side to side here because this is fascia releasing the most superficial part of the pelvis. I would not call this the pelvic floor. These muscles might restrict the pelvic floor because they're overactive and they give us feedback. The pelvic floor doesn't really give us feedback. Maybe, I guess, if we're using it to stop the flow of urine, that sort of feedback, but as far as like a contraction of it, it's unfortunately not the same as a muscle of a contraction, so it's a little bit harder to miss. Now I'm gonna go back towards my tailbone and then rocking a little side to side. If that doesn't feel good, shift forward a little bit and do it where you can and go slower into it. So you're trying to get in touch with the speed at which you feel the release. Today, you might sit here and that's it. You might breathe, it might be 2 breaths, you're done. You might be able to take a little bit more breaths later today or tomorrow or next week. You might be able to lean forward more or go back more. But if you've ever fallen, broken your tailbone, or had any trauma, I expect this area to not be very happy and responsive. And sometimes it might really hurt to release some things, but then in the big picture, you're feeling better. So I usually say don't go towards pain, but sometimes this sort of pain might actually help you longer term. So I'm gently rocking back to back, and I'm back towards my tailbone, so then I can go inside of one tailbone and then over to the other. So this is creating a diamond of awareness of where our pelvic floor is. So we're gonna add some twists. If you have a back condition that you shouldn't twist, then just keep it really small. So starting from the abs here, I'm more or less trying to let one hip bone shift forward and one shift back. And if I have the back conditioning that I need, I can start to twist more. And breathe. It's not the biggest range of motion that you can possibly do. And then you're gonna untwist and then go the other way. I'm equally balanced between both sit bones and the pubic bone and the tailbone as I just twist. The problem with the towel is I don't know how perfectly round it is, so if you happen to have a bump or it's uneven, you might need to readjust it to get better feedback as far as if it's a U-tightness or if it's a towel thing. I always blame the prop first and then the body second. All right. I don't know how this is going to mirror, so I'm gonna have you twist towards the right, but you're gonna keep it on the inside of the left sit bone. So I'm inside my left sit bone as I'm twisting my hips, and then I'm twisting my spine, and then you're gonna come back. Then I'm gonna twist to my left, keeping it towards my right inner sit bone. And then you're gonna just as slow come back. If you're going faster than this, please slow it down. If you're going slower than it, then that's absolutely fine. To the other side, going right inside the left sit bone. So a lot of fascia can tighten up spiral, and this is what we're addressing at the deepest level, which is the pelvic floor. We're really just starting to program you from the inside out. As you start to get more in touch with how fast it's releasing, so if you're really tight, can you breathe, not have tension? So the breath guiding you, not adding more tension somewhere else in the body. You become more attuned and aware of that the more you keep going. And then you can start to feel it releasing more or less. Like even just from each side to side, you might feel different. So now I'm gonna do right sit bone, right side. So I'm twisting towards the right, and I have the towel more going towards the inside of my right sit bone. So I might feel like I'm kind of hanging off towards the left as I twist to the right. And then coming back. And then I'm twisting left and then going towards the left inner side of the sit bone. So the bone is where muscles attach to. So if you're on the bone, you could be stimulating the bone, especially if you're osteoporosis or osteopenia. All of this is osteoclasts, which can help build your bone density. Fascia is the same as soft tissue, is the same as muscle, tendon, ligament. It's all the same material. It just depends how much hydration's in it. Right sit bone, twist right. And you could lean forward a little as you're twisting and go towards the pubic bone, or lean back a little bit and go back towards the tailbone. So depending on your history and variety. So if you start to do this regularly, I don't love hard things. So if you're sitting on a tennis ball, that might just be really aggressive in there, and then it's not breaking up a webbing, think of like a spider web webbing. You might be really getting in there like to a nerve, but you could be causing nerve damage, versus the fascia could be holding the body and the muscles in an alignment pattern, telling your muscles how to work, but incorrectly. So now I'm sitting on here, and then I'm gonna side bend over. So my left arm comes up and I'm stretching over in between both sit bones. Coming up, and then switch. So I'm really not lifting my arm up that much. My arm is lifting because my rib cage is lifting. So I'm looking at my hips, I'm looking here. This is side bending over. This is moving a little bit. And because this is moving, that's what's making this moving. I'm not trying to lift my shoulder up extra. So a lot of shoulder injury people and neck injury, they just do way too much with the neck that they've gotten away with for a long time. And at some point, it's just enough and it's time to just be aware of your body. So you can shift, as you bend right, you shift towards the inner part of your right sit bone. And if you did opposite, just remember and end even. And then I'm going to go to my left and go the inside of that left sit bone. Then I'm going to go to the right, but stay to the left sit bone. And that's a little weird. That's going to make me kind of tip off to the side more. And then when I go left, I'm going to go towards my right sit bone. So I might move my arm here. So you might not be able to do this well on a chair. And then coming back up. Keeping your back flat, you're gonna rock forward towards your pubic bone, and then you're gonna rock back towards the tailbone. So I'm not changing my shape of my spine. I'm moving from my pelvis. And my spine is its natural curve, lower back arch, upper back, round forward, and then rocking forward and back. This helps those deep multifidi muscles that connect vertebrae to vertebrae, that kind of connect outside to the inside. I think it's the transverse to the vertebrae. It kind of looks like a pine tree. When you do the rounding stuff and the typical gym stuff, that's usually the more superficial erector spinae, which can take over and tell these multifidi muscles not to work anymore, and they can pull the back out of alignment. They don't stabilize it the same. So just coming forward and back, and then forward and back. Inhale and exhale. All right, so then we can come off of the towel and just see how you feel now that that towel's there. You might feel in this weird wobbly place because you don't have that unconscious tension that the nervous system has that's probably coming from the fascia. If you have lower back, all of this should be fine. Without the twisting and the side bending, might be a little controversial depending on your back, but all of this stuff really just held the spine the right way, and we're just moving from the pelvis because the spine only wants to do so much also. We can get away with more, and at some point, it catches up to some people in their 20s, catches up to some people in their 80s. This is just stuff you need to learn. So learning to sit on the sit bones and then having the shoulders up above the hips. So sometimes people sit too far forward, and we just need to review that. So some people really arch their back and they're actually on their front of the sit bones. And so what does it feel like to sit on the sit bones, have a maybe little back arch, and then have your shoulders there? I might feel my abdominals engaging a little bit, but when I'm in that splay position, I feel it in my lower back more. My stomach is lengthened and I don't feel my abs as much. And I'm not saying I want you in your abs. I'm just saying you want to be balanced on your bones and bone bearing, and then use your muscles on top of that, because I think we're just so muscle bound in our society without even intentionally doing it. And that's why we're getting a lot of osteoporosis in addition to other things. But if exercise can help hold bone density, then we want to be, even if we're not working out hard, aligning up on the bones, because that's going to be just as important. You could have 10 pounds in each hand doing a bicep curl, but if your back is swaying way back and you're doing the bicep curl, you're actually not bone bearing as much as you think you are, and you might not be getting as much benefits as you think you are. Same thing with cardiovascular. You could be running and huffing and puffing and breathing hard, but if you don't have good communication and circulation to the furthest part of your limbs, you actually might not be getting as much benefit as you think. So you don't need to be as hard on yourself to do those things, but also if you do these things, releasing these far parts and paying attention to the far extremities, you actually might have a better communication and circulation in your body than someone who's sitting here sweating and doing all of this stuff, because things have changed and there has been some not honest approaches in life, and so it can be kind of hard to navigate in this world. So you can always listen to your doctor first of what they say, but there's always benefit in learning and opening the body up fascially, and that should help you not just work harder to sweat and be in pain all the time. All right, thanks for joining and hope this helps.